Hi, it's Lisa Ganora with another Make Better Medicine video. So the last time we talked about pokeberries in the fall, now it's winter here in Paonia, Colorado, in the Rocky Mountains. Everything is covered in snow and ice, and there's not a lot of plants in the garden to talk about right now. So I started thinking about seeds, and then I thought about chia seeds, because chia seeds have become really popular. And there's a lot of recipes on, social media and on the internet. So I thought about what people were doing, and I thought about chia seeds as a medicinal plant or a medicinal herb, because they are Salvia hispanica is the botanical name for chia seeds, which means they're a sage, right? And think of sage seeds, right? So sages include, rosemary and garden sage and a lot of those aromatic mint family plants. All the sages are mints, right? And chia is another one of that group. So, the mints and rosemary, for example, is famous for having a lot of antioxidant polyphenols, right? And like antioxidant means anti-inflammatory, and it also helps protect you against abnormal cell growth. And they have a huge range of benefits for humans, right? Polyphenols. So these are seeds from the mint family that are really rich in antioxidants and polyphenols, right? So I started thinking about that. And another thing that chia has is the outsides of the seeds are coated with basically a kind of mucilage. It's a heteropolysaccharide mixture, right? And that's what makes them so mucilaginous and hydrating after you soak them, right? And the reason they have that is because they're desert seeds. So chia is native to the Central Valley of Mexico, and it goes further south. That's where it originated. And of course, all the different indigenous peoples in that area used it. It was a major crop. It was like, I think, second after corn or second after beans in like how much they produced and how important it was. So they had corn, beans, chia, and amaranth were the top four, right? Amaranth seeds are really important too. So at one point, chia seeds were, a mainstay of a lot of societies, right? So, but they're desert seeds, which means they just lay there waiting for some moisture to come along. And then when it finally does rain, they suck it up really fast. So that's what that dried coating of mucilaginous constituents is about, right? So that they can catch that water. So that's one reason they're really good at it, because that's what they do in their natural world, right? So these are sage seeds. One of the things I wanted to talk about is the constituents, right? So if you look at just what we tend to think of as nutrients with chia seeds, right? We have almost, and this is in 100 grams of chia seeds, by the way, which is this. This is 100 grams of chia seeds. So that's like 125 milliliters by volume, right? So 100 grams of chia seeds contains 34 to 40 grams of fiber, mixed fiber. Or another way you could look at it is it's like 34 to 40% fiber. And those numbers are like always a range because plants do variability, right? It's never just one number. So that is a tremendous amount of fiber. Right there. And this is dietary fiber, it's beneficial fiber. So soluble fiber are the heteropolysaccharides and oligosaccharides and things like that are water soluble. And insoluble fiber is basically roughage, what we used to call roughage in the old days, right? So they both benefit the gastrointestinal system in different ways. And it's really nice to have a mixture of the fiber in there. So, everybody's heard, we need more fiber for overall health, et cetera, and for our microbiome, for the health of our microbiome. And so this is an excellent source of fiber, which is great. And it's not starchy fiber. It's different from starches. So what a lot of people will do is they'll go for chia as sort of a satisfying carbohydrate substitute. So if you're doing a low carb diet or a keto diet or something, and you feel like having some carbolicious, thing you shouldn't have on the, a lot of times chia seeds will satisfy that urge without actually providing starches and sugars. Right? So that's cool. Instead, they provide all this fiber It's a superfood definition, right? Okay, so there's that. And then look how high protein it is. This is pretty remarkable for a plant source to have that much protein, right? So roughly 16 to 21% protein or grams in 100 grams. So it's really nice if you're, not getting your enough protein from other sources. It goes along really well with vegan diets, with vegetarian diets, with any diet, right? But it's really nice to get that. And it's very digestible. It's high quality protein. It has all 9 of the essential amino acids in it, right? So it's a really well-rounded protein too, really good protein source. And then we have it's famous for its omega-3s, right? So it's also oily. In fact, the word chia derives from a native term for oily or fatty, right? In some of the languages, it was in, everybody down there used this, and all the different languages and all the different civilizations down there. So, but there are many, the name chia itself comes out of that sort of fatty seed word, yeah. So it's really oily. In fact, we're gonna grind some chia seeds, and I'll show you if you grind too far, you make chia butter, right? That's how oily it is, just like grinding almonds or, peanuts or whatever, you make the butter of it. So about 30 to 35 grams of oil in 100 grams of seeds, which is also a really rich source of healthy oil. And the fun thing about it is it's about 2/3 omega-3, right? So it's ALA, the omega-3, alpha linolenic acid, and that's a really desirable one. It's important, for the inflammatory balance and hormonal balance and brain health, and just it's important for everything the body does. And that's a really high source. In fact, it's right up there with flax seeds. Like, depending on the variety, it might be more than flax or a little bit less than flax, but it's a really, really rich source of ALA, which is cool. And it has a nice balance. It has, I didn't write this up here, but it also has some omega-6s in that beautiful 3-to-1 ratio that's considered to be ideal by a lot of nutritionists. So it's about 3, ALA to 1 omega-6 of the omega-6s, right? So that's a really nice balance in the oil. And it also has about 10% of omega-9, which is oleic acid, which is named after the olive, right? Because that's the main fatty acid in olive oil, right, is omega-9 oleic acid. So it's nice that it has some of that too, and it has just about 10% of saturated fatty acids also, which is really nice. Those are not the devil. We know that now, right? They're good too. We need those to make beautiful things out of, like cholesterol, which is also not the devil. So it has a really nice range and concentration of healthy fatty acids. So it's hard to find this. I don't know what other food might qualify as having like such high fiber, high protein, and high excellent oil content. It's pretty special. It's pretty unique. So we're really lucky that it's reemerged and it's so commonly available now, right? Instead of being some obscure little thing, that a few people know about, now it's everywhere, and famous influencers are giving their recipes for the chia pudding and all that. So I looked over a lot of the recipes, and there are 2 things that stood out to me. One of them was everybody is soaking them in some kind of liquid, right? Usually putting them in the fridge and soaking them overnight. And then so you have to prepare, think ahead and prepare your chia pudding, a day before you want to eat it, and there's nothing wrong with that, but you can also make it in about 20 minutes, right? So I'll show you how to do that. And the other thing people were doing was they weren't grinding, right? And some people will grind chia seeds, and the importance of grinding is they have really tough little seed coats. So if you just soak them and eat them and you don't crunch all the little seeds up with your teeth, which most of us don't when we eat chia pudding, right? Because it's all tasty and it kind of just slides down. If you don't grind them, you're not releasing the oils and the protein, right? The fibers on the outside of the seeds, you get quite a bit of that if you don't grind them, not all of it. But you're not getting much of these, right? Because the little seeds, they just swell up, when you soak them, they pass through, right? So grinding part of your chia seeds is important, right? If you grind them all, you're going to get a very interesting sort of goopy, it'd be great for plasters and poultices and stuff. But it's a bit of a texture challenge if you grind all the seeds. So I decided to do it half and half whole and half ground, and that way you get a lot of the benefits. Another thing when you get when you grind the seeds are the minerals. Look at this. So this is also per 100 grams. This is from a USDA nutrients database on chia, right? So in this much chia, you get 130% of your daily value of manganese, right, which is an important enzyme cofactor in human metabolism. 123% phosphorus. We need that for like teeth and bones and brain phospholipids and all the things. 94% of your daily value, this is conventional. A lot of nutritionists like to go higher than this, but 94% of your daily value of magnesium. Wow, that's pretty impressive. 63% of calcium, 59% of iron, and 48% of your daily value of zinc requirement. There's also significant amount of selenium in there, right? So it has an amazing mineral and trace mineral profile. And to really release those, you need to grind the seeds to some degree, right? So that's another reason you might want to grind them up. And you can grind them to a powder and throw them in a smoothie or something too. You just have to realize it's going to give it a lot of body. And it's going to give a lot of, maybe if you use too much, it might be a little rubbery, Yeah. And a pretty good dose of B vitamins in there, a little tiny bit of vitamin C, a little tiny bit of vitamin E, right? So it's not a huge vitamin source, but it's got a little bit. And then the really cool thing that you release when you grind them up are these mint family phytochemicals, right? So the polyphenols is the group, and that includes rosmarinic acid, which is a really, amongst nerdy phytochemists and herbalist types, it's a really famous molecule because it's named after rosemary, so that, it's in a lot of plants. You also find a lot of it in prunella or self-heal, Prunella vulgaris. It's a really, really potent broad spectrum bioprotective, antioxidant, anti-inflammatory, one of those plant molecules that benefit us in so many different ways. Some people would call it anti-aging, protects the brain, protects cognitive function, it helps discourage the growth of abnormal cells. So it is classified as a phenolic acid actually, so it could go in this category, and it's the highest concentration one in chia seeds. So there's a significant amount of it in there, right? I was really tickled to learn that recently because I was like, oh, where do I want to get rosmarinic acid from? Prunella vulgaris was previously, my go-to plant, but that's a green plant that's covered in snow and ice right now. So there's a really nice way to get rosmarinic acid in the winter, right? And then there's a whole bunch of different flavonoids in here that work synergistically. And other phenolic acids besides rosmarinic acid is caffeic acid, which is a really famous molecule. It's been studied a lot lately, and it has similar effects as rosmarinic acid. It's really, really powerful, right? So phenolic acids are very beneficial for health overall. Anti-inflammatory, I mentioned that. And I want to go over this with you. So there's a new paper, yay, and I'll give you the link somehow. There's a new scientific review that summarizes all these different papers and all this different analysis that's been done on chia, right? So more information about the constituents in there in detail. We'll put it up on our website. But check this out. So here's clinical action. So clinical studies and population studies have now been done on chia, and it helps balance blood sugar, right? So it can balance the whole hyperglycemia, hypoglycemia thing, or, the blood sugar roller coaster, because it's a very sort of evenly digested, very complex carbohydrate sort of substance, right? It improves blood lipid profiles, right? Which means it lowers your triglycerides and your LDL and improves your HDL, right? You're like, whoa, this stuff is magic. It helps protect cholesterol from becoming oxidized. So oxidized cholesterol is strongly associated with heart disease, not cholesterol, oxidized cholesterol. So it's a really strong antioxidant, right? So it helps protect your cholesterol, and you need like good functional cholesterol, right? So that's important. Helps reduce high blood pressure, which is called hypertension, a bit, not hugely dramatically, but I'm going to show you how all these things tie in together. It's really interesting. Eases sugar cravings, right? So that's one of my favorite things, like when I get the sugar craving on, I'm like, oh, I can't do that. It makes me feel terrible, but I really want to. Then I can make a nice chia pudding or chia porridge, and it really helps, right? So a lot of people will use it to help them wean themselves from sugars. Supports healthy weight maintenance, which is really interesting. So this is all tying into the metabolic syndrome, which I'm going to talk about in a second. Okay, so it's also like the fiber portion of it are prebiotics, right? So prebiotics means food for the probiotics, or in other words, your beautiful symbiotic organisms, the bacteria and everything that live in the GI, they love to eat chia seed goo. They love it. They're just like, and it makes them healthy, and it helps them to produce things that are like beneficial for your intestines and therefore for your whole body, right? So prebiotics supports microbiome, supports healthy GI transit time, which means it helps your waste material to move nicely and steadily along, right? And come out, because if your transit time is too slow, that means basically constipation, and then you can reabsorb toxins, right, that are supposed to be leaving your body, so that's not good for your system. So a lot of times people will say, oh, chia is a laxative, right? But if you think of it more like, oh, it really supports your microbes, your digestion, and your transit time, right? It makes more sense than just being like a laxative, right? But it's slippery, and that helps, right? Okay, and then reduces oxidative stress all over the body, which means antioxidant, right? And oxidative stress damages and ages our cells and tissues. Supports detoxification, which is cool because the liver is the main organ that does detoxification. The kidneys help a lot too, and et cetera, et cetera. But all of the organs and tissues that are detoxifying our body naturally require antioxidants to work properly, right? So by being a rich antioxidant supply, it supports detoxification too, which is pretty impressive. It's like, what does it not do? I don't know if it grows your hair or whatever. Okay, so, and it's anti-inflammatory. So antioxidants in general are anti-inflammatory, right? So it kind of helps, modify any excess inflammation that's going on in your body. And so to kind of wrap all that up, two things we're talking about here are metabolic syndrome, right? And then broad spectrum bioprotective is what I call it, broad spectrum bioprotective. So first, bioprotective, and this is according to studies that have been done on it, which is pretty cool. Cardioprotective, so it protects your heart and your veins, your cardiovascular system, and that ties into the lipids and the cholesterol and all that. Neuroprotective, so it actually, a lot of those polyphenols can cross the blood-brain barrier and protect your brain and your cognitive function, your memory and all that, as well as the neural tissue all through your body. Hepatoprotective, that means it protects your liver, right? And nephroprotective specifically. They actually have done some studies on using it with kidney stones, which I haven't read them yet, so I don't have anything expert to say about that, but I thought that was pretty cool. So broad spectrum bioprotective protects multiple systems, tissues and organs and cells in the body. Nice, right? So where I was going with the metabolic syndrome is, so a lot of times we tend to think of obesity, high blood pressure, fatigue, high cholesterol, inflammation, things like that as being separate named disease entities, right? I call them. But they're actually all symptoms of a fundamental metabolic disturbance in the body, which has multiple causes, but one of the main causes is simple sugars, too much simple sugars, and especially too much fructose, right? And too many carbs, not enough healthy fats, not enough good quality protein, right? Which is really, really common in America, and that's why we have as many chronic diseases as we do, as many people struggling with obesity, is because the basic food foundation is off, right? So, you know, if you look at it sort of ancestrally, right, then carbohydrate sources like chia seeds are really, really different and more like what our metabolism is adapted to, right? And more ideal for healthy, balanced metabolic function, right? Today we have cookies and donuts and things, crunchy, delicious things in bags and breads and all the carbohydrate sources that are really high in sugars and starches, right? And our bodies really can't handle as much of them as we have available. So if your lifetime diet is deficient in these sorts of nutrients, right, and you're getting just carbs and carbs and more carbs, it's one of the root causes of all these problems that we see manifesting, right, as high blood pressure and, reactive hypoglycemia, high blood lipids, high cholesterol, et cetera, et cetera. Those are metabolic diseases. So it's called metabolic syndrome, right? And one of the other things that's involved in that is insulin resistance. Okay, insulin resistance is when you continually have too much sugar in your blood, so your pancreas is putting out insulin to get the sugar out of your blood, right? Because if you have too much sugar in your blood, it's really damaging. It's very oxidative, right? Unfortunately, a lot of insulin chronically is also oxidative. So high blood sugar and high blood insulin, which is called hyperinsulinemia, are damaging over time to the body. Right? So then the insulin resistance comes when you kind of get pancreatic fatigue and cellular fatigue, because like the cells have to suck sugar out of your blood. And the insulin is sort of like the signal that tells them to do that, right? So it's like if you're a receptor, an insulin receptor on a cell, and you hear, an appropriate healthy insulin signal, it'd be more like, hey cell, I'm insulin. Take some sugar out of the blood, and the cell will be like, okay, right? But if you have chronic high blood sugar because of the diet, also stress is a major factor in this, right? And lack of activity, physical activity also contributes. If you have chronic high blood sugar, the signal, the insulin signal has to be so loud that it's screaming at the cells, basically. It's like, hey, let me in! And the cells are like, nah, 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 nah. It's just like too loud of a signal, too ongoing, and they just downregulate, That's insulin resistance. So what's the result of that? The sugar stays in your blood, so you have chronic high blood sugar and chronic high insulin. Right? Because your pancreas is still trying to get your cells to let the insulin in. So that leads to a bunch of problems, profound pro-inflammatory, pro-oxidative damage. All right, so all that stuff is going on. So, what do you do? It's moving towards that low carb diet, but that doesn't mean it has to be an unsatisfying diet, right? Because if you use nutrient dense, more ancestral types of foods like chia seeds, you can start retraining your body and retraining your appetite and retraining your metabolism to like things like that and to not like sugars and starches, right? It's a whole sort of relearning thing, and if you're really serious about wanting to rebuild your health and, you start doing some sort of diet like that, chia seeds can be super supportive, super supportive. Right? Not only do they provide an amazing amount of nutrients, but they also help you, kind of help you through that awful sugar craving thing that I've been there quite a few times. It's no fun. It's very addictive, actually. It's a really hard one to get off of. So it's amazing that chia can help us do that, right? So that was the whole metabolic syndrome tie-in. I did make this lovely little handout, like I said, so it goes into that in a little more detail. And there's some links in there where you can also find some scientific papers and some more info, okay? So what we're gonna do next is I'm gonna show you a medicinal chia porridge, Chia Power Porridge. All right, so let's make some of this Chia Power Porridge. I was thinking pudding, porridge, what sounds more powerful and substantial, porridge. So I'm gonna call this one porridge. Okay, so in order to make 2.5 cups, and I wrote your ingredients up here, You know, 2.5 cups is quite a few servings. That's a lot of chia to eat. I wouldn't want to do that all at once necessarily. So yeah, 2.5 cups of chia, it's enough to make it, stick it in the fridge, have it for a few days, right? We start out with only 4 tablespoons of black chia seeds, right? There's black chia and there's white chia. And they've done comparative studies, and the black version of chia has more nutrients, it's more nutrient dense. So that's the one I use, right? So we start out, and this is 4 tablespoons of dried black chia seeds, okay? Which we have 2 tablespoons here, right? That's 2 tablespoons in a beaker. It's about 30 mils by volume. And we poured 2 tablespoons into our nifty herb and spice grinder right here. So that's 2 tablespoons already in there, right? So because we're gonna grind them, so we'll grind half of that 4 tablespoons, we'll leave the other half whole, right? And the texture of it comes out better that way. But I mean, that's personal, right? If you want it, you know, more flowy, you can grind your seed. You can grind them all if you want. I did that during making experiments, and you know, I liked it, but maybe not everybody would like it. So there's our 4 tablespoons of chia seeds, right? And you know, a nice rounded tablespoon is fine. It doesn't have to be a flat tablespoon. There's wiggle room in all of this, right? Because it's a food, it's a recipe, it's cooking. So we have 2 tablespoons of dried goji berries. That's what this is. So here's our 2 tablespoons of dried goji berries, which takes up, I don't know, about 40 milliliters of space, right? Nice crunchy dried goji berries. So goji berries are awesome because they're actually pretty high protein for a berry, right? And they have a lot of carotenoids. So by the way, chia has a little bit of carotenoids in it, not a huge concentration, but there's some in there. But goji berries are just huge, so huge with carotenoids, which are oil-soluble antioxidants, right? So they help protect our cell membranes, and the brain is, you know, has a lot of oils in it, and all the oily and fatty parts of our bodies and our mucous membranes, our skin, etc. Carotenoids are really good antioxidant, anti-inflammatories for those tissues, right? And they're kind of salty, and they're a slightly tiny little bit bitter, and they actually are pretty sweet. So to sweeten up your Chia Power Porridge, you know, a little bit, I'm relying on goji berries. So like some people, a lot of the recipes you'll see will put, you know, natural sweeteners or whatever in there. And that's kind of defeating your blood sugar balance purpose. I mean, you know, you can, if you need a certain amount of sweetness to get to eat it, and then you can gradually reduce as time goes by until you're not adding any sweetener to the chia. That's like the optimal way to use it, right? So the goji berries are pretty sweet, so they help in that department too. And then we have 2 tablespoons of dried aronia berries. Some of you will know this is one of my recent obsessions is aronia berries. It's another superfood. It's a native North American superfood. It's actually not limited to North America, right? Those are dried goji berries, okay? And they look black because they're super dark purple. They're super dark purple because they're really rich in anthocyanins, right? So anthocyanins are really important. They're a subtype of polyphenols, right? They're a subtype of flavonoids, which is a subtype of polyphenols, okay? So they do all those protective things that polyphenols do, including the protective for the eyes, for eyesight, right? And especially for the veins and for the brain, broad spectrum protective activity. So another superfood, right? So we have chia superfood, we have goji berry, which is lycium superfood, we have aronia berries, which is another superfood. So we're kind of like covering the synergistic spectrum of superfoods with this porridge, okay? And then we have 1 tablespoon of organic, unsweetened cacao powder, right? And you can get all different grades and qualities of that. But at least, at the very least, get it organic, right? So here's some cacao powder. No sugar at all in it, you know, so like the hot cocoa thing is sort of the sugared up version of raw cacao powder, which is a strong superfood and it's bitter, right? It's bitter, and we need bitter for healthy digestion and healthy nervous system and overall health. So we're adding that beautiful cacao to it. And also, you know, cacao, it's sort of it's almost like a bioregional thing, like cacao and chia go together, right? I'm not sure what goji berries. I mean, there is actually a Sonoran Desert native goji berry. I forget what the Latin of it is. But, you know, conceivably, there are some parts of the world where you would get all three of these together, right? Aronia is a little more northern in origin, but then there was you know, widespread trading back in the old days. So maybe once upon a time, somebody put all of those together. Okay, so there's our cacao, right? And then we have a 1/4 cup of raw organic nuts, right? These are going to go in there and add some tasty nut deliciousness, as well as a little more protein. And I've got walnuts here, and you know, a little bit of carbs and some nice oils, right? So you get that substantial nutty thing. You can use sunflower seeds if you don't want to use tree nuts. You can use pinon, pine tree nut. You can use any kind of nut you want. Raw nuts, I think, for this purpose are better. So raw organic, whatever your happy nut or seed is, put that in there. And then I'm adding a few herbs / spices, right? So 1/2 teaspoon of ginger powder, okay? Or if you're really into cinnamon, you could ditch the ginger altogether and just use cinnamon, or you can use a 1/4 teaspoon of, that's what I was saying here, a 1/4 teaspoon of ginger powder and a 1/4 teaspoon of cinnamon powder. Right? Some people really love cinnamon, so you might want to use more. It's just what I came up with. So these are both warming circulatory stimulants, right? And here's another warming circulatory stimulant, cayenne powder. Like, whoa, that seems like a really weird thing to put in your chia porridge when you first think about it. But if you get the right dose of it, it's really nice because it adds this subliminal warmth to it. Right? And you're not like, oh, this is spicy. You're just like, ooh, this is warm and satisfying, you know? So it kind of helps with sugar cravings and satisfaction, satiety, right? And it goes with cayenne. So ancestrally, people would make a drink from cayenne powder and cacao powder because the cayenne and the ginger, as it turns out, and the cinnamon are what we call today bioenhancers, right? Which means they enhance the absorption of other constituents, okay? An example of a bioenhancer is using black pepper, which is another one, with turmeric. And they kind of go together culturally, right? So black pepper, an alkaloid in black pepper, it's called piperine, enhances your absorption of the curcuminoids in turmeric. So it's they call that bioenhancer. And it turns out like bioenhancers are warming circulatory stimulants also. Like the categories overlap. Super fascinating. So these constituents not only add some interesting aromatics, some interesting spice, they also help you get more of the nutrients out of the whole porridge, which is really cool, right? And they stimulate and warm digestion, which helps you get more nutrients out of whatever you're eating. And they're anti-inflammatory, right? So they kind of add to that whole superfood anti-inflammatory status. So they're very complementary to what we're doing with this porridge, as well as being tasty and delicious. If you overdo it, you might be like, oh, whoops, with the cayenne. So what I did when I first started was I took an 1/8 teaspoon of cayenne and I put it down and I just divided it in half and I got a 1/16. And it was almost like, it was very subliminal in this amount of pudding. Like I was like, is it there? Is it there? And then later you're like, ooh, feels warm. So I think, you know, you could even double that and it would still be pretty good. Yeah. Maybe we should do that tonight so we can compare it. We'll put the 1/8 teaspoon in. Okay, so that's all the dry stuff, you know, your dry ingredients. Your wet ingredients are full-fat coconut milk, which we have right here, and water, which is life. Don't forget that, just because it's not the popular saying like it used to be. Water is still life. So we have some good water that we're heating up in our electric kettle there, some filtered spring water. Okay, so that's it. You can also add vanilla extract, which is really tasty. We happened to run out after the chia experiments that preceded this class, so we can't put any in tonight, but it seems like 1/8 to 1/4 teaspoon in this whole thing would be a nice amount of vanilla. All right, so you put that in. Okay, so let's do it. So the first thing you do is you soak your dried berries, right? So we did this ahead of time. So we took the 2 tablespoons of goji berries. Was it 2 tablespoons? Yes. And the 2 tablespoons of aronia berries. And we made hot water in the kettle, right? Because if you start with hot water, it absorbs way faster. Okay. So you don't have to start with hot water. The hot water doesn't damage it though. So, why not? So it takes about 15 to 20 minutes to rehydrate these berries to a nice consistency that goes good in the porridge. Like you could put them in dry, but they'd be super crunchy. It'd be kind of weird. Yeah. So we started these earlier and now they're all rehydrated, right? I think we used 1/3 cup of water. I forget, it's written down in your recipe. They don't soak it all up, but they soak most of it up. And the juice is still really good, right? So we're going to pretend these are here soaking. Actually, we could start some more. We could sort of watch the process. We don't have to do that though. So we'll put these over here with their hot water. We're imagining that we'll put them all in here. Here's what we're going to do. Pretend I'll put my goji berries, I'll put my aronia berries, and then I'm getting my 1/3 cup of really hot water. Be careful. And I'm putting it in there, right? And swirl them around and then cover them with some foil so that, the water doesn't just escape because it's hot. That's how I did that. Okay. So we've got our soaked berries. So that's the step that takes the longest. So you do it first, right? Okay. The next thing we do, well, I'm afraid I'm going to puff that all over the place. Let's put that little lid on there because you cacao powder flying everywhere. So the next thing we do is grind our chia seeds, right? And we're going to mix up, let's see, we'll use this bowl to mix up our stuff in. It's going to be big enough. I guess we'll find out. So I'm starting to feel like this is too little. Well, maybe we'll use this one. Let's see what happens. I know what we'll do. Okay. So grind your chia seeds, right? You can use any kind of coffee grinder for this. So we're over here. But we got this cool sort of herbal laboratory coffee grinder that's also a spice grinder. And the reason don't run it for more than 30 seconds, it'll overheat. The reason I really like this one is you can do this. Isn't that cool? So you can take your whole thing out of there. Therefore, it's, easier to handle, easier to clean, etc. Right? That's a pretty nifty feature. So we got this. I'm just going to count to myself. This might get a little loud. It's actually pretty quiet compared to most of them, but I don't want to go. I'll do about 20 seconds on this. Here we go. Da, 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 da. Ooh, nice. Look at that. That's a nice grind here. I'm going to take it out of here. Oh, lovely chia powder. Yeah, that's what we want. It gets a little clumpy. You got to kind of watch out for that. Total non-sanitary technique here, just because we're not making it for anybody else. We'll get away with this. I'm going to cut that out of there with my finger. Yay. Oh, I did it just right too, because one time I ground it for too long and it literally got that chia butter going in the bottom. And then it resisted mixing with the other ingredients, right? So I'll put my personal hands in this personal food here. Nice. This is very non-clumpy. It turned out perfect. That was about 20 seconds of grinding, right? So you grind your chia seeds. Woo! And then you mix it together with your whole chia seeds, 2 tablespoons, right? Get those in there. And at this point, I'm gonna stir with a fork, get them all stirred in. I suppose you could use some little groovy stirring power tool, especially if you're making like a big batch for Thanksgiving or something. So we get our chia seeds in there, right? And so now I'm not going to put the berries in because they're soggy. So I'm going to put the rest of the dried stuff in here now. So we're gonna put a tablespoon, this is my tablespoon of cacao powder, right? Which is amazingly fluffy and puffy. Maybe even a nice rounded tablespoon because yum, cacao powder. All right, get that all fluffed around in there. Yeah, a lot of people have heard that cacao is a good source of magnesium, which it is. It's also a good source of polyphenols, polyphenol antioxidants. Right? This one's a little crumbly. I'm going to fuss over the texture a bit and break up the cacao crumbles or nodules, whatever you would call those things. Get that all stirred in, right? And then, do you think we have enough ginger powder? We make some fun stuff out of this, some LiQWYDs and whatnot. So how much ginger powder? I think I'll do a half ginger and a half cinnamon just for fun, right? And so we're going to do a quarter, that's 1/8 of a teaspoon. We're going to do a 1/4 teaspoon of ginger powder, a 1/4 teaspoon of cinnamon, right? Some people have heard that cinnamon is good for helping balance your blood sugar. You're going to have a lot more cinnamon to start getting those kind of effects than we're adding to this. It's just a little touch, it's a little cinnamon bump. It's, just a little more help with that is cinnamon, right? With your blood sugar, okay? It's not really like a therapeutic amount of cinnamon is what I'm getting at. So fluff those in. We want everything nicely, evenly distributed. Woo-hoo. Ooh. And the cayenne. How much are we gonna put? We're gonna live dangerously. We're gonna put 1/8 of a teaspoon of cayenne in here. Because again, it's like, even if you like spicy stuff, it's kind of weird to have too much cayenne in a chia porridge. Maybe, unless you're the good kind of weird that way or something. But you don't want the flavor to dominate, you know what I mean? You don't want the heat to like dominate the pudding or the porridge. Yeah. So I'm looking forward to eating this tonight because it's probably like 14 degrees or something out there, Fahrenheit. It's cold. All the warm things are looking really attractive right now. Okay, so we added our complementary spices / herbs / warming circulatory stimulants / bioenhancers or superfood powder complex here, right? And then, so we did all that, and then the nuts. So what we're gonna do next is we're gonna chop these nuts, right? And we're gonna get some hot water ready because we're gonna start doing our liquid things. All right, so there's our nice powders all mixed up together. Our chia seeds ground and whole, and our spices and our cacao. And we're just gonna add a bunch of nuts. And personal preference, how little to chop them, right? Nuts are one of those things that's fun to chew, so we do tend to like further chop them with our teeth when we eat something with Zoom, It's a nice contrast to the slipperiness of the porridge to have nuts in it because they give you something to bite, Humans love crunch. But I usually don't chop mine up too small. I mean, you could if you want to. You could throw this whole thing in a blender if you wanted to, right? If, like, say somebody had a hard time chewing, right? If you wanted to make this just a total squishy goo of goodness, you could do that. It would taste the same, right? But that's about it for the nut chopping. I like to have some nuts to bite, give it a little more of a crunchy thing. So there's our chopped walnuts. Why did I use walnuts? Because that's what I had. That's what I had a bunch of at the time that we planned this recipe. A bunch of walnuts. So we're just got to get those walnuts in there. I love walnuts. Walnuts are really good for the brain, right? And if you think in a doctrine of signature sort of way, they look like little brains. Just cool. But they have a lot of really beneficial polyphenols too. Walnuts, I think all like natural nuts are kind of super foody. You know what I mean? Very nutrient dense, right? Nuts in general, as long as they're not like stressed by roasting and salting and going rancid and all the things that can happen to nuts. So I'm just gonna use a fork and just stir those nuts in there. Dun dun dun. Super hard. People that know me know that I'm not much of a cook, so like I like all the cooking type things to be super easy, right? Easy and quick. That's kind of one of my underlying philosophies. Easy and quick. Okay, so that's all the dry stuff. That was easy. So what we're gonna do next is mix our wet things together. We're gonna pretend to put vanilla in there because we don't have any. And then here's the kind of coconut milk I like to use. So a lot of the recipes that you've seen on the internet will use milk out of a carton, right? Some kind of nut milk or oat milk or whatever out of a carton. There's nothing wrong with that, except it's a little more processed and it's less creamy, right? It's less thick and creamy. So, and sometimes there's guar gum or, those sorts of thickener type things in there. And sometimes they put added vitamins and calcium and whatever. So I really like taking the coconut milk right out of the can because it's, it's less processed and thicker and creamier. All right, so here's all of our fluffed up dries again, right? All of our dry ingredients. Here's our can of coconut milk. When you first open it, a lot of times the fatty part will be separated from the watery part, so I kind of pre-mixed that. But try not to make a mess with this. You want to get the fatty and the watery parts sort of pre-stirred together. So I'm just like doing a rudimentary job of that right now, for demonstration purposes. But if I was making like a chia porridge for a really special event or something, maybe I'd stick a little immersion blender in there so I can get it nicely blended or whatever it took. So what we're going to do, and this is what makes it go so fast, is we're going to add hot water, right? So hot water speeds everything up, right? So half a cup of full fat coconut milk, like it says on the board. Oh, this is just going to spill. I mean, there will be spilling. Oh, clearly this is a 2-spoon. This coconut milk is kind of cold, so it's resisting being totally squishy and drippy. So, oh God, I love this stuff so much. I remember when people were like, coconut milk is so bad for you because it's all saturated fats. And then we learned more about that. And now we're like, coconut milk is so good for us because it's really rich in, oopsie, I hope I don't need that tablespoon again. It's really rich in MCT, which is medium chain triglycerides, right? So it's the kind of saturated fat that your body really loves to metabolize and turn into ketones, right? So people who are doing ketogenic diet or ketosis, a lot of times they'll use MCT oil, right, to sort of switch their metabolism into burning ketones instead of burning glucose, right? So coconut oil is really rich in MCT. So it's a very metabolism-friendly sort of oil. Right? It doesn't do the bad things to you that we used to think it did. So there's a half cup of that beautiful, thick, rich, creamy, out of a can. So natural. I mean, it'd be more natural to get it out of a coconut, I suppose. But, here we are, America. This came from the store. So half a cup of that. Gorgeous stuff, right? And then hot water. How much was it? 1 cup, okay. I was gonna be like, 1.5 cups. I'm glad I checked. So a cup of hot water. Since this is a half a cup, I'm just gonna do 2 of these, right? And that way I'll rinse the rest of the coconut oil out of it. There we go. It's funny. I used to just throw this together intuitively, and then I'm like, well, people like to have measurements when they're first making something. So there we go. So we got that in there. Add a little bit more coconut, mix that up. I saw somebody doing this with a nice little hand blender. I was like, that's a good idea. You don't really need it though, because as soon as you put that coconut milk in with the hot water, it really just goes all liquid. It melts it real nice. And then we put in our soaked berries, right? These are kind of halfway between being liquids and solids at this point. So I'm like, I'll just put them in with the liquids. Put our nice soaked goji and aronia berries in there. This is so amazing. Oh my gosh, they smell so good. They smell like the best food. Look at that pretty color it's turning. I think it's kind of salmon pinky colored. That's actually the carotenoids coming out of those. You know, it's interesting with goji berries, carotenoids are not, they're low polarity, so they're not very water soluble. But for some reason, they like to come out of goji berries. So, you know, nature's got a bunch of tricks up her sleeves, up her million billion sleeves. Go with our million billion arms. So for some reason, those carotenoids jump out of those goji berries, which is really, I'm still thinking about that. I'm like, what's going on there? I have an idea, but I'm not really sure. Okay, so then we have our nice warm liquid. It just came off the boil. Now we're gonna stir our dry powders into it, and so that they don't just clump up into a giant clump party because of the ground chia. I'm just sprinkling them in a little bit at a time, or less. Ooh, it's starting to smell like hot chocolate. Oh, that cacao whiff. That's beautiful. You know, subtle cacao aromatics are coming out. All right. And you know, this temptation is to do. There we go. Oh, I left a little tiny bit. No. Right. Don't want to waste any of that fabulous stuff, right? So it does tend to stick to the sides a little bit. You want to keep at it so you know it doesn't chunk up too bad, right? And I can feel it getting thicker already. Like it's just been, you know, what, 15, 20 seconds since I added it. Okay, and it's starting, I can feel the resistance developing in there. It's starting to really thicken up because that chia is absorbing the water out of the water and out of the coconut milk, right? So it's actually absorbing it. Okay, so I don't need to overstir it because now it's really nicely mixed. If you do the ingredients in that order, like I just did, it keeps it from gooing up together more, yeah. When I was first working on this recipe, I didn't do that. And I was like, ooh, annoying lumps of chia seed. And like, surely there's a better way. So finally I came up with this. Okay, so I'm just going to let that sit. We could cover it if we want to. Okay, instant improvised cover. Ding. So we're going to let that sit, you know, for, I don't know, 10, 15 minutes. And you're going to see how thick it becomes. And so we didn't need to soak them overnight at all. You know, I love that stuff. It's like when we teach our tinctures class, we're like, here's how you make a tincture in 15 minutes, you know, and people are like, but I learned you have to let it sit 6 weeks. And I'm like, well, it all depends on your method, right? So using our trusty Vitamix, we have a way to map it all out and make a fresh or a dried herb tincture in, you know, 15, 20 minutes instead of having to wait, which is super handy. So cacao is a superfood if you leave the sugar out, right? A lot of people are like, chocolate is candy. Well, chocolate isn't cacao powder. You know, it's cacao powder with a lot of things added to it. So leave the sugar out. Cacao is a superfood. Antioxidant polyphenols, right? It's got mood-boosting amines in it. So it's like, oh, happy morning, cacao powder without the downfall of the sugar, right? It's got a little bit of caffeine, not a whole lot. There's a little bit of caffeine in there. And there's some theobromine mainly, which is related to caffeine, which is kind of a happy chemical, right? Except if you're a dog, then it's toxic. Yeah, so recipe not for dogs. The goji berries we already talked about, that they have protein, that they're a little bitter, they're a little salty, and they have those beautiful carotenoids in them, so they add that. Aronia berries, we mentioned already. I said anthocyanins. What I didn't say about aronia berries is they have OPC in them, another kind of polyphenol, right? OPC is also called PAC, stands for oligomeric proanthocyanidins, right? And they're super powered polyphenols. Hawthorn has them. That's one of the reasons hawthorn is good for the cardiovascular system. Cacao has them also. They're kind of tonic astringent molecules in physiomedical speak, right? And aronia berries have them. Elderberries have some. You know, so OPC are like really, really good health building molecules. So those are also in the aronia. And then we mentioned ginger, cinnamon, and cayenne being bioenhancers and warming circulatory stimulants that enhance digestion and absorption of other constituents, right? So we mentioned that. And then the coconut milk has the ketogenic fatty acids, the MCTs, we mentioned that, right? And nuts are delicious, nutrient-dense, floor-balanced food. So we did go over all the ingredient notes. That's great. Let's check the consistency of our chia already. Like, how long has it been? 5 minutes or something? Ooh, look how much thicker it is already. You see it? It's already like almost puddingy. Yeah. So it happens pretty quickly when you use the hot water. Okay. So for, I would say leaving this another 10, 15 minutes, it'll have a nice thick porridgey consistency. But maybe since, we don't want to just like wait that long on camera, why don't we taste some of it now? Because it's got its flavor now. Let's taste it and see what it's like. Where's my tasting spoon? Oh, I guess this is my tasting spoon. Is it big enough? I'm just going to get a delicious, gigantic spoonful of this stuff out. Is this even going to go in my mouth? All right, I'll do some organoleptics for you. So, that smells so good because it has that, it smells very rich and food-like, but it's very, very cacao-y. So I feel like I'm about to have some delicious chocolate something or other, but it also has a lot of substance to it. Definitely the dominant aromatics are the cacao. I don't really smell goji berries or aronia berries very much at all. It just smells like rich, creamy cacao food, which is very attractive to me because I love cacao. Look at it. Wow. That's so good. It's even better. I'm feeling the warmth of the cayenne. Like before, I was like, am I feeling the warmth? Now I'm definitely feeling the warmth of the cayenne, which is nice. It's not hot. It's not spicy, but it's warm. And my body is like, ooh, nice. Cold outside, snow coming out of sky, like warm is good. The cinnamon makes it really tasty. Actually, I guess I was smelling that cinnamon and cacao combination earlier. Now I think about it. Yeah, and that's what's super attractive together, right? So I'm feeling the warmth of the ginger. I'm feeling a little bit of warmth from the cinnamon. I'm getting a little bit of sweetness from the cinnamon. That's so good. Wow. The nuts are chewing really nicely. And the creamy of the coconut is super, super satisfying. This is the best one yet. I love when that happens. Yeah, I call this a success. And the fun part about it is it's got different textures in it, right? So the goji berries and the aronia berries are kind of like a dried fruity chew almost, even though they're rehydrated. They got the kind of fibrous fruity chew. And the nuts are like the crunchy, oily nut goodness. And then you've got that wonderful hydrating, mucilaginous chia stuff going on in there. Wow. I'm impressed. That's a good recipe. I suggest using the 1/8 teaspoon, unless you really don't like cayenne. There's another thing too, food intolerances, right? So this is non-dairy. There's no wheat, there's no corn, there's no soy, right? There's no eggs. But what is in here? Cayenne is a nightshade, and goji berries are nightshades. Right, so if you are nightshade sensitive or nightshade intolerant, you want to substitute something else out for those, right? Otherwise, super low allergen potential, which is really cool because a lot of people are dealing with food intolerances, right? Coconut, once in a while somebody reacts to coconut, but usually even if you react to other nuts, you don't react to the coconut. Then there's tree nuts, of course. So if you don't want to use tree nuts, you can do sunflower seeds or leave them out altogether, or come up with something else as a substitute, right? So it does have the tree nuts in it. But for gluten and dairy-free folks, it's really, really nice dessert potential. In fact, you can take this and make other things out of it, right? Which I personally don't know how to do, but I know people who do. They make really good, birthday cakes and stuff with chia fillings and everything. But this is really excellent. Success. Yeah, I think you guys are going to like this. So we do have the notes. We'll put them up on the website, so somehow you can download them. but I love to share this with people, because I think chia it's a real, it's super fortunate that we have chia, and I'm really grateful for it because, as a single nutrient, it's pretty amazing, right? Because we had all those, the fiber, the protein, the oils, and all the polyphenols and all the minerals and even some vitamins. It's astonishing that we have a food like that and that we can, I tend to hoard chia, and I carry it with me actually a lot of times. Like I'll keep some in my van because if you're in a big hurry or you're out hiking or whatever and you need some highly concentrated nutrition, you can just eat some chia. You can chew it up if you want, but drink a lot of water with it, right? So it's one of those like travel. People used to carry pouches of it way back, like I'm talking hundreds and thousands of years ago. People would, when they had to run from A to B, because even before horses showed up, how did you get from A to B? You went on a boat or you ran, right? And people would carry a sack of chia, to have a concentrated, high nutrient density thing that they could just stop and then eat some plants and maybe a rabbit or something on long journeys, right? So it was an ideal travel food, and it still is. Okay, so that's our Chia Power Porridge. I hope you like it and get to make some. And if you want to know more about what we're doing, go to elderberriesfarm.com or herbalconstituents.com. And we have online classes and we have workshops here at Paonia. So you can go to those websites and see what's coming up. If you want to get on our mailing list, we're about to send out a newsletter that also has chia information in it and some more information about some herbal constituents courses that are coming up. And we're doing an herbal pharmacy workshop here at the farm in June. And some other really cool stuff is happening here. So you can check that out. Okay, good to see you again. Thanks for being. Bye.